Hello everyone, I'm reading from Enlightenment by the Natural Path, starting on page 49. Chapter 7, The Opportunity of Human Life. The learned Avatahuta continued, O king, from all the spiritual masters I have acquired great wisdom. Now please listen as I explain to you that knowledge which is learned from one's own body. The material body, which is also my spiritual master, because it teaches me detachment. Being subject to creation and destruction, it always leads to a painful end. Thus, although I use my body to understand the truth of the world, I always remember that it will ultimately be consumed by others. In this manner, remain detached. I move about this world. A man attached to the body accumulates money with great struggle to fulfill the desires of the material body, and with such propensity he expands and protects the position of his wife, children, property, domestic animals, servants, homes, relatives, friends, and so on. At the end of life, this body, just like a dying tree which has already produced the seed of a future tree, manifests the seed of one's next material body in the form of one's accumulated karma. Having assured the continuation of material existence by this process, the material body sinks down and dies. One might argue, among all the gurus mentioned so far, the material body is certainly the best because it awards detachment and fine intelligence by which one can engage in the devotional service of the Lord. Although it is temporary, we should therefore serve the body with great attachment or else risk the offense of ungratefulness. How can detachment from the body be recommended when the body is endowed with so many wonderful qualities? The answer to this is that the body itself does not actually award detachment and knowledge. Rather, the body is so filled with the miseries that any common sense person cannot help but perceive the uselessness of material life. Just as a tree produces the seeds of the next tree and then dies, the lusty desires of this body produce the conditioned soul to create a further chain of karma. Finally, the body, having paved the way for an indefinite continuation of material suffering, drops dead. Because we do not clearly understand the difference between the body and the soul, we foolishly think that the body and the soul are identical, and that we can become perfectly happy on the platform of bodily sense gratification. Therefore, those who foolishly accept the temporary body as all-important cannot be favorably compared to the self-realized souls who intelligently understand the superiority of the eternal soul. So many senses, so many wives. The Brahmana continued, A man who has many wives is constantly harassed by them. He is responsible for their maintenance, and all the ladies constantly pull him in different directions as each struggles for her self-interest. Similarly, the material senses harass the conditioned soul, pulling him in many different directions at once. On one side, the tongue is pulling one to arrange tasty food, then the thirst drags one to get a suitable drink. Simultaneously, the sex organs clamor for satisfaction, and the sense of touch demands soft, sensuous objects. The belly harasses one until it is filled. The ears demand to hear pleasant sounds, the sense of smell hankers for pleasant aromas, and the fickle eyes clamor for pleasing sights. Thus the sense organs and the limbs, all desiring satisfaction, pull the living entity in many directions. Then he created life. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, by expanding his own potency, created innumerable species of life to house the conditioned souls. The Lord created the form of trees, reptiles, animals, birds, snakes, and so on. Still yet, he is not satisfied within his heart. He created the human form of life, which offers the conditioned soul sufficient intelligence to perceive the absolute truth. Doing so, the Lord became pleased. Lower forms of life, such as the cow and horse, are actually suitable to fulfill the purposes of creation, But human life awards the opportunity to understand one's eternal relationship with God, as stated in the Vedas. In the human form of life, the soul is fully endowed with intelligence to understand spiritual knowledge. In human life, the soul may speak realized knowledge, see the truth, know the future, and also understand the reality of both this world and the next. Taking advantage of the experience of mortal life, the soul in the human form may endeavor for immortality. The human body is fully equipped to achieve this end. Therefore, one must conquer the pushing agents of the material senses to fulfill the actual purpose of human life. The Lord's material creation consists of the living entities and dead matter. The less intelligent living entities try to enjoy matter. The Lord, however, is not satisfied by those species of life in which the living entity blindly strives for sense gratification, without any understanding of his spiritual nature. We are suffering simply due to forgetting Krishna and blissful situation of his abode. If we accept the Lord as protector and shelter and execute his order, we can easily revive our eternal blissful nature as part and parcel of the personality of Godhead. It is for this purpose that the Lord has created human life. It should be understood, continued the Brahmana, that after many, many births and deaths, one achieves the rare human form of life, which, although temporary, affords one the opportunity to gain the highest perfection. A human being of sober intelligence should therefore immediately endeavor for the ultimate perfection of life and not fall down into the repeated cycle of birth and death. After all, sense gratification is available even in the most abominable species of life, whereas Krishna consciousness is possible only for a human being. Material life essentially means repeated birth and death. Even the lowest forms of life, such as reptiles, insects, pigs, and dogs, have ample opportunity for sense gratification. Even ordinary houseflies engage in a busy sex life, multiplying rapidly. Human life, however, enables one to understand the absolute truth, and is therefore full of grave responsibility. We should remember that this valuable human life is not eternal, and within this life we should do the needful to achieve the highest perfection, Krishna consciousness. Before the moment of death, we should seriously cultivate our self-interest. Real happiness is to engage in the service of the absolute truth, and that is the actual necessity of the human being. One can experience Krishna consciousness in the association of devotees of the Lord. Without their association, one is in danger of being attracted to an impersonal connection of life, which causes one to fall away from devotional service to the absolute truth, or, being discouraged by one's failure to understand the absolute truth, one may return to the false platform of sense gratification. Human life is meant for cultivating Krishna consciousness under the guidance of the experienced, self-realized devotees of the Lord. About the spiritual master. The Brahmana Avahuta spoke, "Having learned from my spiritual masters, I remain situated in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, fully detached and enlightened by realized spiritual knowledge. I wander the earth without any attachment or false ego." If one receives the teachings of his spiritual master but keeps them locked up within his brain as theoretical dogma, one will not actually become full in knowledge. To develop steady and complete knowledge, one must see the teachings of one's spiritual master everywhere. Since a Vaishnava or devotee of the Lord is never ungrateful, he will offer all respects to anyone or anything which gives him further enlightenment in the path of worshiping his bona fide spiritual master, who is non-different from Lord Krishna. Among the many gurus mentioned by the Brahmana, some gave positive instructions and others gave negative instructions. Pingala the prostitute and the young girl who took off her bracelets are examples of proper conduct, whereas the hapless pigeons and the foolish elephant teach behavior to be avoided. By both kinds of examples, one's spiritual knowledge is enriched. The enlightenment of King Yadu. Having thus spoken to King Yadu, and accepting obediences and worship from the king, the Brahmana felt pleased within himself, and bidding farewell, he left at his will exactly as he had come. After hearing the words of the Havahuta Brahmana, King Yada, who is the forefather of Lord Krishna's own ancestors, became free from all material attachment, and his mind became fixed evenly on the spiritual platform. King Yatu was thus enlightened by the saintly Brahmana, who taught him to become free from material attachment and fix his consciousness on the spiritual platform by simple observation of the creation of God. Part 2, Introduction. The Vedas teach that by the grace of Lord Krishna one gets a spiritual master, and by the grace of spiritual master one gets Krishna. As we have seen in Part 1, the genuine spiritual master enlightens his disciples about a religious process that can lead them along the path back to the kingdom of God. Just as a forest path has landmarks by which a traveler can gauge his progress, or by which he can tell he's going in the wrong direction or even traversing the wrong path altogether, so a genuine spiritual path has certain guideposts or characteristics by which we can gauge our progress towards self-realization. In Part 2, Sirila Avakavana Deva briefly describes those characteristics as he answers a probing question asked him after a lecture in Bombay in 1980. All over the world, Christians are living and dying for their faith. How is it that you people, their progeny, have embraced another faith? A test of a real religion. Actually, you put your finger on the real problem with our world. If we are thinking in terms of Christianity or Hinduism, then we are not actually on the spiritual platform, we're on the material platform. We're already seeing historically, not only here in India, but even more so in the Western countries, that this type of sectarian faith has simply produced war and suffering. Spiritual life means to understand scientifically what we are and what God is. If we simply become attached to so-called denomination, some designation, I am Christian, I am Hindu, and we have not a scientific understanding of God, then we are still on the material platform. From God's point of view, there is no question of Christian or Hindu. He wants to see who loves him. Therefore, everyone should put forward his knowledge and love of God, and whoever puts forward the best knowledge and love should be recognized by all. That's the test. So we are going all around the world publicly challenging that this Bhagavad Gita offers the best way to know and love God. Religion without philosophy is mere sentiment. So on the basis of philosophy, knowledge, and practical understanding, we are defeating other systems of approaching God. After all, one has to look at a thing's symptoms. For example, one doctor may say, I have the best clinic, you should come to me. And another doctor says, no, my clinic is better, I have much better equipment, I have better techniques, you should come to my clinic. But if we see that at one clinic all the patients who come out are sick and dying, and at the other clinic they are coming out healthy, then it is obvious which is the real clinic. The whole thing is completely non-sectarian, completely scientific. In Srimanam Bhagavatama, the question is raised, Ahata Sarahuatra Mayata Saraham Amata Huarmur. What is the best religious system? What is the best spiritual process? And the answer is given by Sutta Goswami. The supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendental Lord. Yet such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. What is Paro Dharma, or what is the best Dharma? Sutta Goswami does not say. Hinduism is Paro Dharma and Christianity is Paro Dharma. This would be a very childish understanding, Sutta Goswami says. The best spiritual process is what actually brings you to the point of love of God. But the problem is that everyone will cheat and say, no, I already love God. So therefore Sutta Goswami Actually, this cheating has given us the symptoms, because when the symptoms are clearly known, you cannot cheat. For instance, if I give you some money and say, please hand this money over to Mr. Patel, but I don't tell you exactly what he looks like, then someone else can come and say, I'm Mr. Patel, you hand it over to me. But if I tell you, no, he is a man who dresses like this, who speaks like this, you should identify him by such and such a way, then by clearly knowing these symptoms you will avoid all cheating. In the same way, everyone will say, I love God. So therefore the symptoms are given. When you love God, the first thing is ehatatuki. There's no material cause for your service to God. It is not like some people who pray for bread. Oh dear God, please give me bread. What is this? Simply praying for God for bread? I think also in India sometimes we pray for God for something material. But this is not actually religion. This is called cheating religion, because it is not approaching God out of love. It is business. It is a business relationship. My dear God, I am offering you such and such, and now you kindly reciprocate. Here is my list. I want this and this. This is not religion. It is business. But the love of God means no business. You trust God. He is your Father. If a child says to you every day, Mother, Father, we're going to eat today. Are you going to cook today? Will there be food today? You would become very discouraged. Oh, our son has no faith. He has no love. Every day he thinks we are going to starve him. So if you always asking God, God, can you send bread today? There will be bread. Will there be bread today? Please don't let me starve today. God will say, what is this nonsensical person doing? God is not a poor man, so there is no question of asking God for bread. He knows what we deserve, He knows what we need, and He will give it to us. We should pray for God, pray for love of God. That is ahanatuka. And arpafarhata, when one loves God, he is always serving God. Everything he will do for God, that is described in Bhagavad Gita. All that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer and give away should be done as offering unto me. So always serving God means there must be some detachment. Otherwise you will serve God now, and then my senses will drag me away. Therefore, by rendering devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires both causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. So when one actually engaged in loving God, serving God, we must have varha, detachment, and knowledge. Both things must be there. Let me take shelter in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, who has descended in the form of Lord Kanat Mahabhuparabaha, teach us real knowledge. His devotional service and detachment from whatever does not foster Krishna consciousness. He is descended because he is an ocean of transcendental mercy. Let me surrender unto his lotus feet. These two things are mentioned throughout the Vedic literature, detachment and knowledge. These are the symptoms we're looking for. If one says, I'm Christian, that's all right, but we want to know, do you have detachment and knowledge? Then we will accept you as a person who actually loves God. Otherwise, if you have no detachment, if you have no knowledge, then we will never accept your so-called religion, and the same goes for Hindus. The same thing goes for Muslims or anyone. We have to be practical, we have to be scientific. That's it, y'all. That's the end of the book. See you later.